tapes. Conversation with Mr. William Cashin from Torrington, Connecticut, and Mr. Vic Cificello from Yonkers, New York. Interview conducted by Dr. Charles Johnson, University of Tennessee History Department, on the 8th of August, 1987, at Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Reunion of Company A, 7th Armored Infantry Battalion, 8th Armored Division. So, start with either one of you, how you got Company A. Vic?
Well, I was with the 8th Armored Division for a shorter period of time. That is, while Bill was with the 8th Armored Division almost from its inception, I guess.
Not quite, but...
No, in Tennessee or...
Before we left for
the
East Coast.
But I had joined the outfit in Holland, in Herleem.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, in other words, I had been a replacement for almost 2 years, waiting for an assignment. And I was an ordnance replacement, and so it was very difficult to get an assignment. But...
when did you get into the Army?
Well, I went into the service quite early in 1942. I enlisted in the Reserve Corps. I had looked for a commission, but I'm red-green colorblind, so I had difficulty with the Air Force, the Navy, the Coast Guard, what have you, but the Army, welcome, with open arms. So I went in September of 1942, and I was able to finish my senior year at college and went on active duty.
Where were you at school?
At Manhattan College in New York City. So then when I graduated in June, a week or so later, I went on active duty into the service, and I went through ordnance school at Aberdeen, Maryland, and my training was primarily with range finders and height finders, fire control equipment. And so from there we went over to Europe, waiting for an assignment which never came through.
Did you go to England first?
Yes. Well, we went to Scotland and then moved south to England.
Did you stay with the same group, or were you sort of...
Oh, no, we were very transitory. That is, with a group of replacements, they would go wherever the assignment would lead them. So I was in England from about May until the turn of the year, maybe about January or so the following year. Then in December they had the trouble with the Bulge, you see, and so they were looking for riflemen. And so regardless of your specialty, I guess they called it an MOS number, we were primarily all sent to one infantry division or another. So there were a large number of us that ended up in Herleem, Holland, and then eventually from there we went to the 8th Armored Division after they had their Nennig
after our first battle.
Yeah, right. I understand there were about 65% casualty there at that time, so a large number of replacements went over, and I ended up then in the mortar squad. Now, when I first went into the makeshift orderly room, I was telling some of the others before, I explained to the captain what my background was in ordnance, and he said he would find, he was interested to hear all this. He said, why don't you go over and join the mortar squad as a rifleman? Sort of like a PhD being asked to go over and wash dishes. Nothing wrong with that neither.
Whatever.
And so it was there, I guess, then that I met all the others. In particular, I met Bill Cashin.
You were in the 2nd platoon then?
2nd platoon. I was in the mortar squad, and Bill was in the squad up ahead of me, a machine gun squad, and there were 2 or 3 rifle squads up ahead of that unit.
That would have been the same platoon Jim McDonald was in then?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right, the 2nd platoon.
But you came to the company a lot earlier.
Yeah. I came in, just before the port of embarkation.
Okay, but you weren't down at Fort Polk then?
I was in Fort Polk.
Oh, you were in Fort Polk?
Yes.
Okay. What was your background before you came in?
Well, I started out 13 weeks basic training at Camp Cross, South Carolina, into the Army in March of '43. So after the 13 weeks, I got shipped down to Camp Landing, Florida, into an IRTC, Infantry Replacement Training Center. Spent about a year down there. Then I went to Camp Robinson, Arkansas. Spent a few months there. Then got transferred. I was over to Camp Howes, Texas. for 9 weeks advanced training. That meant we were in the barracks one day, shipped out into the field, and we stayed out there for 9 weeks. This is the truth. In pup tents, that's how we stayed for 9 weeks.
It's a dirty way to live.
In night tactics, map reading, and all that stuff, you know. And then we were transferred to the 8th Armored. And I was particularly glad to get into an armored division because of the fact that I had a very good friend who got their pants beat off over in St. Lo in an armored division, you know. So I was kind of glad because, and he was in the 7th Armored Division, I was kind of glad to get in the sister division, you know, the 8th Armored. So we left there and went to England. It was about 11 days, I guess, something like that. For 11 days I was sick.
A lot of people were from the sound of it.
That ship, it was something. I finally got sunk in the Mediterranean anyway.
Was that right?
Yeah. So we had our first battle. Well, went to England and left there. Went to Luxembourg around there. We started across France, and ironically, it was the first blizzard that they had in 50 years. The worst snowstorm they ever had, I guess. And we, in half track, sliding across that continent, you know, geez, it was terrible. So anyway, we had our first battle, and well, previous to that, I was always switched around, and I left friends, you know, different camps, every camp, and I was separated from all my buddies, you know, and I was sort of a loner until I got into the 8th Armored. So we got in our first battle.
Before that, though, you had been put in the machine gun squad, and
right.
So you had a home.
Right then and there, yeah. And we were close knit group, you know, and so we had our first battle. I got frostbitten hands and feet, and I was sent down to the 8th station. So they says I took off my shoes and it was all ice in my socks and stuff like that. And we didn't have any. All we had was galoshes and combat boots, you know, and these stockings about as heavy as this. You know? So anyway, the medic looked at me and he says, "Well," he says, "I'll be back to you." The guy next to me, I don't know who he was, and he says, "Oh," he says, "you're going to get tagged. He says, you're going to be leaving the outfit." I said, "I'm going to be leaving the outfit." Now this might sound corny, but as I was saying before, I was always a loner and I was always on my own because I left all my friends, you know. So anyway, he says, "You're going to get tagged." He says, "You're going to be leaving." I said, "Bullshit." I put my shoes back on and I hobbled back out of the aid station and went back to the line, you know. So, corny, you know. But
no, but it's not, though.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and it's
Yeah.
not.
But it was the idea of, I'm leaving again, you know. Well, like hell, this is where I'm staying, you know.
I've been too many places.
Yeah, right.
So you've gotten, from the time from Polk up to Kilmer to England down there, you've gotten pretty well incorporated into
Oh,
the
yeah.
squad.
And then we, there was only about, let's see, there was there was only 5 of us guys left in our squad. And then we went to Holland. That's when we picked up Vic, you know.
And the replacements. And
Yeah.
others.
And it was
5
around the
left
horn
out of-
after that, you know.
5 left out of 14? Or
About, yeah.
a dozen.
Yeah. That was it. Well, mostly all frozen feet, hands and
Yeah.
feet, you know.
Now, this 7 days, I guess, in Nennig was the most eventful
Oh, yeah.
period of time,
Yeah.
of all the time, overseas in Europe.
Right.
Yeah, for the people who went through it, I don't know if it's because it was the hardest or it was because it was the first.
Well, I would say it was the most traumatic.
Yeah.
I mean, Nennig is the one topic of conversation
Yeah.
behind all the conversation.
And because of the fact we were the first company in the entire division to be sent in combat first. The first company. It's quite a thing. This is a close-knit group that really is.
Yeah, I felt that as soon
Yeah.
as I came in.
Right.
Yeah.
Usually, I guess they would ease an infantry outfit into combat, but here they met seasoned
Yeah.
German
Oh, yeah.
soldiers, and so
11th Panzer Division.
it was hand to hand.
Yeah.
There was apparently you were told going in that it was going to be a kind of seasoning a day or two in, and it turned out to be 9.
That's right, and we never expected it to be like a switch position for the Germans, you know. They bring in troops here and bring in troops there, and switch them from here to there, you know. And that
was a central position then,
right,
some kind of...
yeah. What they call is a switch position.
All the training that, your training was very different from what
Yes.
you had to do, but your training was, at least in theory, apropos to what your task was once you got into combat. Did you find that the training that you had was useful, or did you have to learn all over again?
Well, I was a truck driver for a short period of time, like I say, in these 2 camps, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And when we finally got into the advanced training, what they call it, and fell right into it because primarily right from the word go, I was in infantry to begin with, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it was. I took infantry training. It was just a lot of bayonet practice. Geez, I guess I had over 100 hours of bayonet practice.
I had none of that.
Did you have your bayonet on in combat much?
Not too much. No, not too much. And it was, well, one time, when we were on top of the hill in Ninnig, we relieved the 94th Division. And so we were on the farthest point on this hill. And in the early morning hours, you could hear the Germans talking right across the valley on the other side of the hill, you know. And come to find out, they were medics and they were taking care of their wounded. And then as it began to get light, you could see these guys over on the hill and talking. You could really pick them off. We were that kind of but they were, but we weren't that kind of people, you know. They'd shoot anything in sight. So anyway, we let them get their wounded back onto the thing. Then all of a sudden we get bombarded. And our squad leader says, we're pulling back, you know, back down the trench. Now the trench was big. It was as tall as we were practically.
Did you dug it, or was this
No, it was already done. It was done by the Germans. So we're heading back. Then our lieutenant comes up and he says, what are you doing back here? And he says, we're holding this hill at all costs. He says, that's the orders I get, that's the orders I'm giving you, and this is it. So, geez. And our squad leader says to me, he picks me out, he says, it's Cashin, he says, you're going back through the front of that trench, because we expected a counterattack, you see. And we thought maybe the Germans were coming up the hill and in the trench, coming towards us. So Bill Schmidt says, Cashin, he says, you know what to do? He says, reconnaissance by fire. Now that meant the trench was, you go in the trench this way, and it was zigzag this way. And every corner I came to, I would jump out and fire around, even though nobody was there, you know. And that's reconnaissance by fire, you see. Bang, 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 all the way till we get the other end. And now these guys are following me, see. I was a turkey.
That time.
Yeah. So we get back to where we were, and good thing we had left. Good thing Bill had the presence of mind to pull us out, because we would have been mangled, because our entrenchment, we had the 94th guys, they put over this, they put logs over, and they put a carpet from one of the houses and put dirt on top of that, just for shelter, you see, keep us from the snow. We got back, and that was blown to blazes. So it was a good thing, you know. Presence of mind that saved us guys. You know.
Vic, what do you remember about your first time getting shot at seriously?
Well, that happened very quickly. After I joined the group in Holland, we were there maybe just 1 or 2 days. It was over a weekend. I think it was on a Monday, about 6 o'clock in the morning. We moved along to engage the enemy, and it was very easy going for a while, and I thought, gee, there's nothing to this until the first shots were fired.
Were you riding or walking then?
I think we were on a half-track until the enemy was engaged, and then, of course, all the infantry would leave the half-track, and the vehicles would pull over to one side, and the tanks would all amass and move forward. And so it was slow going most of the morning. But towards the end of the morning, I guess we came to this little farmhouse, and there were a few scragglers or snipers that were left behind, enemy snipers, and there was one in the backyard. I think this was where Kenny Scrittenberger was killed.
Yeah.
So we jumped into this house, and we knew that there was a sniper, there was a lone German soldier in the yard somewhere. And we knew we couldn't move forwards until someone took care of him. So Ken Scrittenberger and Herb Miller, whom you've met, went up to the second floor. And Herb didn't know where this man was, but, you know, we shouted up to him to be careful. I guess he was there with the eyeglasses, with the binoculars, trying to locate him, and when you know, the sniper took a bead and hit him right between the eye, and the poor man fell backwards. And there were no windows in this house. It was very blowy and cold, but I distinctly remember part of his brain hitting the door sill, you see, and coming down. But Kenny was a heavy fellow, and the blood just simply flowed, and the wind gave us a shower. I remember being covered with blood. And we couldn't move. We could not move. And then finally, somebody went around, and at this point, after he had shot Kenny, now the man suddenly decided it was time to give up. He couldn't have given up a half hour earlier. He knew his position was overrun. So he came out hands up, and a few people took him back to headquarters, and they came back very quickly.
Okay, he didn't get all the way back, probably?
Well, I don't know.
I'm surprised he even got in.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened.
Because
But,
it's...
I mean, this is your indoctrination into it, and in a few hours' time, you could see all this bloodshed of someone who was very close to you. But beyond that, there were casualties and scary moments.
I've heard it said that with prisoners of war, if you're captured and if you can get past the first 15 or 20 minutes, you're probably going to be all right with either the Germans or the Americans or the British. But it's that first 15 or 20 minutes that is the real dicey.
That's right.
Well,
the British would call it dicey time.
I mean, you're geared up, you're all hyped up, the adrenaline is flowing, and there's the enemy, you see.
And he's just killed somebody.
And he just killed someone, and he has thrown up his hands before you've had a chance to retaliate.
Say, okay, everybody home free?
Yeah, after a few minutes, things calm down, and things become a little more civilized, not that they ever are. I mean, under those circumstances.
It's one of the kind of open-ended questions I ask. Do you remember a time, looking back on it, when you think you were particularly lucky? There obviously you got off that ridge line before the artillery came in.
Right.
But I usually find that people remember at least one time when they could have gone one way and they went the other, and they made it.
I can say that every engagement that our company was in through the war, until the war's end, I was in.
Yeah.
And at one particular time, I felt that I was near the end, and I was so lucky, you know. But how long can this last?
Was using it up.
And then you get to thinking after a while, you know, which is bad.
Yes.
But we were up in the Hartz Mountains, and we were waiting in reserve. I think it was the 2nd Armored Division was pushing across the Elbe River. Now they got pushed back, and we were held in reserve, and they were going to try it again. And if they didn't make it this time, we were going. And at this particular time, I felt this was it. This is
Run out.
This is the time, you know. But fortunately, the war had ended, you know, and the Russians came into Berlin and stuff like that, and just everything was, and we were still held in the Hartz Mountains, right at St. Andreasburg, and it was just like everything drained out of me when we found out the war was all over. You know, I said, "Oh, jeez,
I'm going to live."
I made it. Yeah.
Of course, there's still a possibility you might have gotten transferred to the Pacific.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yes, right. Everyone, that was behind everyone's
Yeah.
mind. In fact, that's where we were going to go.
Yeah.
Most of the people in the division, either across the Atlantic or through the Mediterranean. to approach the Japanese from the other direction. In fact, it was at that point that the war had ended in Europe, and I thought to myself, I survived here. Now I'm going to have to go over to face the Japanese, who are much more forceful and less wanting to give up or surrender. And so I thought, well, let me get a book in Japanese. And I started to study Japanese. I figured, at least as an interpreter, I would not be a rifleman.
Sayonara.
So I got to up to about chapter 3. Then it wasn't necessary to continue any further because the war had ended in Japan.
Yeah. James Jones, who writes about World War II, and he talks about the unmaking of the soldier. The people who think, who understand that if they stay in it long enough, they're either going to be badly wounded or they're going to die.
Yeah.
And that's what happens.
Right.
And Jones was in the Pacific, and he fought on Okinawa. And but he says, once the war is over, and you realize that you're not going to die or be badly wounded. He said it takes a long time to get back off that.
Yes.
And you're never the same after that, because you've come to terms with your own death in a very particular way.
You got gear.
And then that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
And it's just like when you hear a bomb bursting, you drop and stuff like that. Well, geez, I can remember being home and a car backfiring. Well, geez, I grabbed a lamppost, you know.
I talked to a guy a while ago who said he worked in a grocery store for a year or so after he came back from the Pacific. And he was Pearl Harbor Survivors Association guy. So he'd been in right from December 41. And he said he hardly talked to anybody for a year.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just was so turned in on himself that he'd make change and he'd do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But there was nothing else going on. That it takes. Of course, you guys had time afterwards. You weren't immediately separated, were you, from the service? How long were you with the unit after the war?
Well, not very long.
The war ended in May, I guess,
Yeah,
in Europe.
May, and
Then we moved
And
down
then
to
the-
Czechoslovakia,
Down to Pilsen.
Pilsen, and this was in maybe August. Oh, prior to that was in July.
well, I was.
And at that point, they were deploying the people over to the Pacific.
Mhm.
So I left there and went to the 35th Division. Other people, where did you go, Bill?
Well, I went. I came back to the. First I went to the 4th Armored Division. Then I got transferred to the 83rd Infantry Engineers.
Yeah.
And we're just hanging around, you know. And then I got put into the 56th Signal Battalion. That's who I came home with. And,
Seems sort of odd coming home with a unit that you.
You're absolutely right. And there was only one guy that I knew there that was in my outfit that came home with me. And there I am separated again. You see all these different times. You see.
Yeah.
So from the war's end, which was in May, the following April, I was discharged.
So you were in for close to almost a year after that.
Yeah.
You know, something that's very amazing, Chuck, is that really, I've never had the conversations that I've had in the last 2 days in 43 years.
Yeah.
You really could not speak to someone else who did not experience the same sort of a
Right.
trauma that you did.
That's right.
I mean, it's altogether different
Yeah.
talking to someone else. You just don't communicate. He cannot feel and sympathize or empathize, whatever,
Yeah.
with what you're saying.
That's right.
And so now when two people here get together, it's almost as though the clock had stood still for 43 years. You just simply went back, and I could see Willie Cuff holding on to Dick Peters' arm.
Yeah.
He really,
Yeah.
there was a bond there.
Oh, sure. And even now, when you meet them, you meet the guys and you hadn't seen them in 40-some odd years, you know. Well, geez, you can actually go up and give them a hug, you know.
I saw that yesterday.
Yeah, that's right.
You know.
Just like this guy, he didn't recognize me. I recognize him, you know.
Well, I recognize your phone, your voice on the phone.
Yeah.
But, yeah, these are very tense moments that we had undergone.
Yeah, nobody ever shot at me with any intent. I was of the generation that was just a little too young for Korea and a little too old for Vietnam.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's an experience that I've never have had. And there's a part of me that says, I wonder what it would have been like for me, how I
sure,
would have done
yeah.
it. But I don't have any deep regrets that I haven't had a chance to.
Because you see, at this
But-
particular time, we were, patriotism, it was gung-ho.
Oh, sure.
Right.
1942, 43, I mean, geez. And to go into the service was, geez, that was great. You know, at least you were examined, you found out you were all right anyway. You know, and
the country was in danger.
And not only that, but all your friends were gone. You had nobody home. All you went to do was go to work every day and come back home. And
Yeah.
particular time before that, you used to go out at night and say, well, the guys have a few beers and stuff like that. And, you know, but it was all gone, and you were glad to get in the service. And,
Bill mentioned the fact that he had jumped around. You see, I had the same sort of experience as a replacement. And somehow or another, everyone looked for an association. Everyone looked for an assignment, in
Yeah.
particular a division.
Sure.
And it was surprising, as I say, the day that I joined that 8th Armored Division, how much pride it gave me.
Yeah, sure.
Put the patch on my arm.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were in a division.
We were in
Yeah.
the 8th Armored
You
Division.
belonged. You know, you were.
You were part of
Sure.
a group of 12,000, part of a group of 13 million.
Yeah.
People all engaged in the same activity
That's right.
in the same time frame.
Yeah.
And it was worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I say, if I could avoid all the bloodshed and everything else and all the sad experiences, I wouldn't mind re-experiencing
But I have,
the whole 3-year bit all over again.
I have no regrets whatsoever. You know. Of course, you can't say that about guys who were in Korea or Vietnam or something like that. You know. But as I say, this whole country, it was a declared war, and we were all doing our bit. You know, and glad to do it.
One of the things I wonder about, is because it's a debate going on with military historians now, how did you assess the quality of the weapons that you use in comparison with the quality of the weapons that you faced? Now, that's a real broad question.
Oh,
You
yeah.
come at it in a lot of different
Well,
ways.
you had to compare the 88 field gun, you see, against what did we have on the
But
Sherman
Jesus,
tank?
you know, we had
There was
75.
no comparison. I mean,
75,
it was
We
a
had
very...
75 at that particular time.
Yeah.
You know. Christ, the Germans had 88.
They had 88s, they had a super machine gun, and...
And that Burt gun scared
Yeah.
the hell out of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Their Tiger tanks, I think, were a little superior to the Sherman
Oh,
tanks.
yeah, because they were designed in such a way that when a Sherman fired at them with a 75,
The shell just
it would
bounced right off the armor plate.
Ricochet off, you know. Until they got, I guess they got the 90s on there after a
Yes,
while.
yeah,
They came late with some...
yes.
Right, it's just like the equipment that we had for shoes, you know. Right, a lot of our guys used to take their shoes off, their combat boots off, and stuff the galoshes with straw in the
Oh, yes,
hands,
yeah, yeah.
and then put an extra pair of socks on.
Yeah,
Or
so
I
you
used to
keep the
carry
air
socks under my
circulating.
arm.
Yeah.
Pair of socks under my arm all the time, to keep them dry.
Yeah.
Just put them in my jacket, let them flop down.
Yeah,
Nice
yeah.
one. Then you had to change them. You had to change your socks if you didn't do it.
That's right. I had to carry an extra pair on the belt. No,
Sure.
I hadn't thought of that in all this time. But if you didn't change your stockings and you were going all this time, your feet would perspire and
Yeah.
then you get frostbite.
Yeah. Then when you start unlacing your laces, right at the tongue of your shoe and inside was all ice, you know?
But a Chinese soldier, you see, did not have the fine boot that we had. But as you say, they would take some newspaper, wrap it around their legs, some straw, and some newspaper.
Right.
Now that probably kept your foot warmer than the best boot that the Quartermaster Corps designed here. But of course, if it got wet.
But you know, ironically, after Nenick, after all that frozen foot stuff,
Yeah.
we got these shoe packs. They come up,
Yes.
come up to here,
Yeah.
and they issued us with the felt liner in and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
right.
Well, I put them on. Well, I never suffered
Yeah.
so much in all my life because my feet were starting to thaw out, you see. Oh, jeez, I'm telling you. I couldn't move. When I did, it was just, they ached. I can't describe the pain that was there, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Uncomfortable.
But the rifle that we had was a good rifle,
Oh,
the Iran
yes.
rifle. It was
Oh,
an
yeah.
automatic rifle.
Yeah.
Very effective.
Yeah.
How about the light 30 that you had in the machine guns?
That was excellent. That was a good gun. That was real good. We had 3 of them on our train. Of course, we stole one. We were equipped with two anyway, and of course the 50 caliber on the ring mount. And we stole another one and put it on the back of the half track, so we had three. We were
Like you were like a flying fortress at B-17
Right, yeah.
on the ground.
Right.
The half-track pretty good? Held up pretty well, or
Oh, yeah.
was it
Well, I usually call it a coffin with a motor in it.
Purple Heart box?
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, there was a few times that I guess
Ours
maybe
was-
shrapnel or
Yeah.
something
Oh, well,
penetrated.
yeah,
you know,
right, right.
And
Lacking that
just-
mechanically, they just kept going.
Just whack around the side of the thing for the guts on it.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the half track.
Have you ever gotten any reactions from the enemy on the other side?
I haven't had a
Any
chance to talk with any German combat troops. I've only been in the project about 3 years.
Yeah, I imagine there are many you see who are here, who are living here,
Yeah.
who were on the
Yeah.
other side during World War II. So that probably some research along that line would be helpful.
Yeah.
Many history books of World War II that I've seen have made some presentations you see from this side, and then in the same time frame, what was happening in the German camp or the Japanese camp, and you could get a history of really what was going on.
There's a new book by Max Hastings called D-Day and the Battle for Normandy, which does that.
I
It talks
see.
about
Back
one
and
side
forth.
and the other side.
Yeah.
And Hastings' contention is that, it's controversial, he's a British journalist. Hastings' contention is that the Germans were better soldiers than the Americans or the British. Now, you're going to get a lot of argument on that.
Oh, yeah. Well,
They
better
were
is a relative
superb.
term.
They were superb. They really were. I thought they were anyway. But
It all depended on who you were coming up against. That is,
Oh,
they
yeah.
had the People's Army, the Wehrmacht,
yeah.
and they were not as dedicated as maybe the SS troops might have
Yeah.
been. On the other hand, you had some young kids fighting you who were 10, 11, 12 years old. And even you might even have had firemen when we captured. We went over a hill and captured a group of these people all dressed in military regalia, you see. And there was no fight, whatever. We thought we had captured the German general staff. Here it turned out they were firemen.
Imagine. Oh, Jesus.
But the war was on its way out. It was waning, phasing out, I guess maybe from the turn of the year on.
You know, from what I've read, 8th Armored Division faced a whole different set of qualities of enemy troops, from really good to not much at all.
Yeah, because we were tossed around. We went like from Luxembourg all the way up through Belgium and Holland, and we got attached to the British Second Army.
Yeah, you replaced a British Armored Division at one point, didn't you?
I think so.
Well, right, we were,
You're at least right
we were
on
in
the
the Ninth
flank.
Army, and
Yeah.
we abutted the British Army.
Yeah, and then we got attached to the. I'm pretty sure we got attached to the British Second Army for a while, and then we went up through the Harz Mountains that way.
Yes.
And then we came around back down into Tilton. So we got around for a division. We moved, you know.
What'd you think of the British? Did you have much to do with them, the soldiers?
First of
Not
all,
to
I
an
couldn't
extent.
understand what the hell they were saying anyway. So,
Only supposed to speak the same language.
yeah. And they were entirely different. As far as I'm concerned, Europeans are entirely different than the Americans. Our way of life and our way of thinking, you know. As far as the Germans go, too, they were, I thought they were bloodthirsty for Christ's sake, you know.
Some of them were. You read an interesting book on the life of Montgomery. And towards the end of the book, you say, as Montgomery grew older and he was almost on his deathbed, I guess someone asked him if he was afraid to meet his creator. He said, "No, I'm not afraid." He said, "But how will I explain all the men I killed to St. Peter?"
Yeah.
It's a problem with being in any kind of command.
Yeah. You're a soldier, and
What did you think of the, or did you have much thoughts in terms of the quality of the leadership within the company and the battalion? That good officers, good NCOs, bunch of losers,
Well,
or did it vary from time and place?
geez, I don't know how to answer that, because the guys that we had, they were pretty good. I mean,
yeah. I didn't get to see too much of the company commander, let's say. I had a little contact with the platoon leader, but I thought they were doing a fair job.
But you didn't have any, you wouldn't have any contact with, say, battalion officers or
No,
people
no.
like this?
From the time I joined the outfit in Holland, there was very little contact for socializing. In fact, you can see it in the photographs. I have a whole group of photographs, but they only involved a half-track up ahead, Bill's half-track or a track beyond that.
Right.
So I really never got to know anyone else. There wasn't any time to socialize.
So your relationships were really very limited in terms of the people that you had
It
much
was
to do
one-to-one,
with.
that's right, with your nearest neighbor.
10, 15, 20, 30 people sort of in...
Yeah, and even a rifle platoon as compared to a machine gun platoon, or squad even. Machine gun squad is more stationary than a rifle squad might be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're here.
You provide a base of fire.
Yeah, and they moved around a lot more in their stories. And even though we were in the same platoon, I can't relate to them because they were gone to some other area where we were stationary here, you know. When they talk about something, she said,
Well, you can even see it in the alignment of these squads. You had a rifle squad, maybe another third rifle squad, then the machine gun squad,
And the mortar.
and then the mortar, you see.
Yeah.
So I saw the least activity. These people would flare out, you see, we would be backup.
Yeah.
But in time of a conflict, everything gets
But the
mixed up.
quality of leadership, Jesus, we had great guys, we really did. Especially Bill Schmidt and George Wheeler. Jesus, they were the greatest, you know. And they helpful as all hell. They do anything for you, and try to make things comfortable for you, explain things to you. You didn't know, they knew, you know. Go here, go there. We're a bunch of dummies anyway.
You're at the bottom of the barrel, so you make the last move.
So we were privates. We did everything that they told us to do.
I noticed in the pictures that I saw that you had brought up, a lot of ladies in those pictures.
Oh yeah, you constantly encountered the populace.
I never met
It wasn't that you always faced the enemy face to face. In an armored division, I guess you never really did engage the enemy that way. You were always at a distance.
Yeah, but I still didn't know those women. You had that picture.
Well, you would pause a while, and then you'd be in a city more than out in the country, and
Can't get them into a trap. I don't know.
and I don't know, some of the others, it seems that whenever there was a young girl around, there was something to put your arm around the girl and have a picture taken of you, the girl, in the vehicle.
Yeah.
And then you moved on, of course, and there was no contact, whatever.
I'm sure.
Left them crying, right?
That's a fiction that we'll continue to preserve.
Yeah.
Did you have, down in Czechoslovakia, did you have much to do with the Russians? Were you close enough to...
They were there.
Oh, yeah.
They pulled out and we moved in.
Well, they moved in gradually while we were there because we knew that they were going to occupy the
Yeah, it was
country.
sectored, wasn't it? It was...
No, they had their own place, but as far as going into Pilsen proper, everybody could. Oh, we posed with the guys and stuff like that. You know, took a couple of pictures with the Russian soldiers. I never liked them. I still don't today. I don't like a Russian.
Why did you feel that way then?
Because I don't know. I think mostly because it's communism. You know, I'm against communism right from the word go. Don't ask me why, but I know what they stand for. And their communistic doctrine is to take over the United States. I don't give a damn what anybody says.
And you felt that back then too?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yeah. As you read up and what is instilled in your mind, or you know, but in the course of time, you know, it's been happening. Things happen here, like Nicaragua and all that. Right at your own back door. Nobody seems to be talking about it. Jesus, let's do something about it.
I talked with a guy in the 35th Division who did a lot of trading with the Russians across some river.
Oh.
They would trade watches for enormous rolls of money.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, sure.
He lost most of it all playing shooting craps when he was
Oh, yeah.
coming back, but
Yeah.
he said for a while he was rich.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, some of the soldiers that you would meet would be simple, maybe peasants who were doing the fighting, so that it would seem that the louder a watch clicked, the better quality
The better
they
the
had
watch
watch
was,
was.
yeah.
Yeah, some people were trading Mickey Mouse watches for
Sure.
whatever the Russians had to offer. But the situation thing, I think there became political. I guess as a result of the Yalta Conference, we were told to hold back at the Elbe River and go no further. But the American troops could have easily crossed the river and gone on into the capital of Germany. In fact, I was at the Elbe River. I was in need of a pair of glasses. There was one particular day when the shelling was very, very intense, and I was in a ditch at that crossroad in February, that I took my glasses off because I was perspiring so profusely that my eyes were burning from the salt. And I thought, now where will I put these glasses so that I won't damage them? I put them in the gas mask. That evening, when I took the glasses out, one lens was shattered to a powder from the concussion. I thought, God, I must have been lucky to pull out of that. But now I figured, well, gee, maybe this is a lucky break for me, you see. So I went to the sergeant and I told him I don't mind fighting the enemy, but I said, give me an even chance. I want to see what I'm shooting at, thinking that I would be sent back to England. Instead, they sent me to a MASH unit right up at the front at the Elbe River. And they were getting ready to cross the Elbe. In fact, they tried to cross the Elbe and they had all these casualties that were coming back into this hospital. So I was laying there, you see. I had a cot. I had to wait my turn. I had to wait several days for the doctor to look at my glasses. But all night long, as the casualties kept coming in, see, the nurses would come around and give you a shot of morphine. So I'd have to stay awake, and I would say...
Do you know which room is Joe and Helms?
Joe Helms.
I don't. Sorry.
He's on the floor somewhere. So I would stay awake, you see, and I would tell the nurse, hey, don't give me that shot. I'm not wounded. I'm going to have my eyeglasses repaired. And so that went on all night. And that's, I think, where the conflict had stopped, the war thereafter. They were held up at the Elbe, but they...
Yeah, there was 9th Army that was up at the Elbe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could you tell a difference in the way the fighting went or the way your world went when you were with 3rd Army or when you were with 9th Army? Did it seem to make any difference?
3rd Army would be in the Ardennes.
Yeah,
And the-
yeah.
Down
Well,
on your first...
Of course, like Vic says, it was very traumatic at the beginning because it was our first baptism of fire, you
Yes,
see.
yes.
But now as you move on, you know what to expect. You could hear artillery, you know which way they were coming from, ingoing or outgoing, and you knew when to duck and not,
There's only one way to learn that, unfortunately.
Yes.
You have to be there and you have to go through it. But it seemed to quiet down after a while, whether they were running out of steam or what, which they left it, It seemed to slow down after a while.
Did you have more, say, Patton was in command of 3rd Army, and who was it, Simpson in command of 9th Army?
Bradley was up there.
Simpson was the 9th Army.
Yeah, Bradley was 12th Army Group.
Right.
The group, right, yes.
Historians looking at them, talk about Patton's aggressive, attacking spirit, and sort of rap Simpson for being somewhat reluctant to push as hard as he might be. I'm just kind of trying to get a feeling if there's anything that the people who served in, because a lot of units didn't serve in both armies. I was just wondering if you sensed any difference in the way the units were run. Probably not.
No, matter of fact, I wouldn't even give that a thought, But like you say, Patton was aggressive. He was moving forward.
Well, there were personalities at the upper level, too,
Yeah.
between Bradley, Eisenhower, and Patton. And then there were
Montgomery.
animosities between the American Expeditionary Force and the British. There was a conflict there between Eisenhower and Montgomery, and Montgomery had some very snide remarks to make about Eisenhower. He claimed Eisenhower kept changing his mind all the time, and he felt
Montgomery didn't
himself...
think Eisenhower was much of a commander. commander.
No, that's right, that's right,
I think he was wrong.
yes.
I think so too. I think he had more foresight than Montgomery had.
Quite a bit, I think. How did you guys get fed? Did you have good enough food? Did you have to scrounge for your food?
Well, vaguely, of all my recollections of food is the last thing that I can recall. There had to be a mess truck that came along every so often, but you had C rations and K rations. But as you say, you did live off the land. You'd go through a farm, and there would always be
Chicken.
jars of jelly and bacon and what have you. So
Chickens.
food was
first hot meal, and that was breakfast. And we didn't have Al Medtech with the half-track. He was a mile down the road with all our gear. We didn't have any mess kits. So we lined up on the mess line. They gave us pancakes here, 3 pancakes, butter in between. Now it comes to the syrup over your hand. Now we're eating like this, you know, in a cup of coffee. With the syrup dripping and butter. Oh, Jesus.
Probably syrup freezing before very long.
Right.
You know, in an armored division, as far as food, but in particular as far as liquor was concerned, you had this vehicle, you see, this was your home, and you could put anything into it you wish. You'd go through a big city, and you would come across several cases of liquor, you see, and you would just put it in there, or several cases of women's underwear, or...
That was sickening stuff. Liqueur, you know.
Whereas the foot soldier had to carry everything on his back, so he led a different life, really.
There's one advantage of being in armored infantry.
Yes.
You do have a place to store things.
Yeah, we had a rack on the back, and all our duffel bags were in that, you see. And that was our worldly possessions. Everything we had, change of clothes and everything was in that.
Yes.
And if we didn't have a change of clothes, then that was it, you know. You stayed for 6 or 7 days in the same thing. Then we had those long overcoats too, you know.
You get frozen on the bottom.
Yeah, they would bend however you sat.
Yeah, I sometimes tell a story in the physics class where we talk about heat conductivity, about that heavy overcoat that the Army soldier was asked to carry. It weighed about 20 pounds,
Yeah.
right? And so when it got wet, it weighed a lot more.
Oh, sure.
Together with everything else that you had to carry. The smaller you were, the more you had to carry. You had to carry the mortar bags. But I pointed out to them that the American soldier, you see, had to be quick or he would be shot.
Sure.
And at the same time, he had to be warm or he would freeze to death. You see, he neither wanted to be shot to death nor did he wish to freeze to death. So someone got the idea, say, being that you're carrying a second set of underwear and a second pair of slacks, to throw away the coat, you see, you would wear the 2 pairs of slacks and wear the 2 shirts and wear the 2 underwear, 2 sets of underwear, and this kept you much warmer, you see, in that heavy overcoat. And of course there were layers of air here. You see, air was a very, not a good conductor of heat. So the quartermaster for the Ordnance Department, I suppose, picked this up after the war, and as a spin-off, we have the design of ski clothing.
Layered.
1 layer of nylon, another layer, you see, and some insulation in between. And so a few ounces, you see, replace several pounds of heavy clothing. And these spin-offs continue to occur time and time again.
Talking about appropriating bad liquor or whatever else, how long did it take you to get used to the idea that you're going through someplace and, okay, let's take this? That isn't the way you were brought up, that you would go and take from somebody else. But
To defend their belongings, the spoils of war.
If they take from you, you take from them. Because of the fact that we captured this unit, this town unit, and then we came across, after driving a half-track up, we came across one of our trailers that the Germans had in the back of one of their trucks, you know. So it was abandoned. And we pulled over, hey, let's grab this thing, you know, put it back where. All of a sudden, a general, I forget what general it was, he come by, he was a brigadier general, he comes by, he says, what the hell are you guys doing there? And we said, well, there's a trailer here, and it belongs to the United States Army, and the Germans had it, and we're taking it back. He says, that's right, guys. He said, any goddamn thing you want in this town, you take it, he says. Like that. Okay.
Well, most people really didn't steal, per se. That is, if you took a bottle of liquor, it was for your own enjoyment, so to speak. It's not that you took it and sold it to someone else.
Yeah, we came across a lot of silk stockings, too.
Yes.
handy to bargain with.
Yes.
Whatever.
I mean, if you went into a museum and you looted a painting or something of this sort, it was another story. There were articles of war that dictated against that sort of thing. But if you came across a jar of strawberry jelly, no one was going to complain.
Oh, yeah.
Or an enemy weapon. A lot
Yeah,
of people picked up Mausers.
Yes.
My God, I can think of all the shotguns and nicely engraved shotguns that are smashed against trees and stuff like that. Oh. Did we ask them if they had any weapons or anything like that? Oh, yeah, here. Smash them alongside, smash them right against the tree. And I think now I can see, I know we have those. Oh,
If you could have gotten it back.
Oh, yeah. And people did get them back too, I guess, you know.
Well, people brought back all kinds of silly souvenirs. I had 2 hand pistols.
Yeah, I did too.
And so, one day there was an article in the paper that the police would pick these up, you see, and there would be no penalty as far as you're concerned. We had the Sullivan law.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you're in possession of a weapon of this sort, you're subject to a felony charge. So they came and they picked them up and they gave them to the FBI. They loaded the barrels with lead and then returned them. But I disposed of them. There was no, it was ridiculous to hang on to that sort of thing. But there were all kinds of weird souvenirs. I can remember in Holland, the British had been in that little town where Kenny was killed. And this British soldier had gone into this, I think it was a church, you see, and it had been blown apart, and it was booby-trapped. On a rafter was a hand, just this portion of the hand. That was all that was left to that soldier. And I can remember someone was in the group wanting to take it as a souvenir.
Definitely.
Now, how gruesome can you get? But to this day, I can see that hand. I mean, I can see a dirty glove and envision that hand just being there.
That's macabre.
Yeah.
Yeah, but war is.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I've come to understand about it. That explosives can do terrible things to the human body.
Yeah.
And most everything that can be done has been done.
Yeah.
And that the people who think that Vietnam was some sort of terrible war and worse than anything else, I think just don't know anything about warfare.
Yeah.
Because what happened when you got hit with an 88 was as bad as anything that ever happened.
Yeah, right there.
Well, the war is a war, I suppose. What I could not see at that time was the inhumanity in these concentration camps. You see body after body after body.
Did you open any of them yourselves in your tour?
I think we had skirted one concentration camp. Remember, there was a wagon loaded with dead bodies. They looked
The smell was...
Yeah, there were bodies piled on top of one another, about 50 of them. And when I looked into this one person's eyes, I could not imagine that this person was one day alive and was human. But I mean, they treated them abysmally.
Yeah, towards the end of the war, a fair number of American units either opened or went through concentration extermination camps. Although most of the real bad ones were over in Poland, where people didn't get to.
Yes. Well, I imagine these stories probably all have a similar tone that pervades them all.
Yeah, but each set of experiences is a little different.
Yeah.
Because everybody brings different things to it. They come to the company at different times.
Right.
Their background was different. And as you said, you get, even in the same platoon, a real small number of people. The experiences of one squad is different from another.
Absolutely, sure.
I think you can narrow it down to a squad and say they probably shared the same, pretty much the same experience.
That's right.
But to expand it to a platoon, then all of a sudden you've got a whole lot of different wars going on.
That's right. And they're individual experiences, you know.
There was one story that was real strange. You have a gradation of sort of braveness. There's some people who have nerves of steel, and you would follow them anywhere. And there were others who were maybe at the other end who were real wimpy and what have you, but nevertheless they did their job.
Sure.
Now, in the second platoon, we had Stanley Roback. And this man was ferocious. He had a handlebar mustache. He had a sash. He looked like a German officer, an SS trooper, rather than an American soldier.
Strictly GI. You know?
But, you see, no, he was the bravest man that I had met within the group. And so this one night at a crossroad, I think there were a few German vehicles there and an American tank, you see, and the group, the company had been separated. Half was in the farmhouse, and the other half was on the outskirts of town. So now we had to meet every 2 hours or so on guard duty. We would come this way, you see, meet at the intersection, and then go back. And then the next tour would come on. Well, Stanley came back, and he was completely shaken. That is, out in the field, there were German soldiers there, and he said he could hear the clicking of the barrel. And I thought, my God, Stanley is shaken, and I have to go up and follow him.
Yeah.
So I was really shaken to the core, and I was with this big, tall kid from Kentucky, and I was a little older, and I didn't want to show him that I was frightened. But I tell you, the tour was for 2 hours. Maybe it took an hour to get there and an hour to get back. We were back and forth in about 20 to 30 minutes. We ran. And when I got back, you know, I felt I had pangs of guilt, I suppose, within me. And I thought to myself, now, why was it that I was so fearful? Why was it that I was almost cowardly? I asked the kid, you know, I said, let's take another walk back. We went right back to that crossroad and came back. But as I say, it was just a peculiar experience to envision Stanley Roback being shaken, and I had to follow his footsteps.
But the thing is, you did.
Yes. Yeah.
In fact, you went back.
Yes. I did it twice. Just to prove to myself that
Which probably...
I wasn't cowardly or what have you.
It didn't do you any harm in your
No.
feeling about yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that people can't know until it happens.
Yeah.
One of the things the Army's always very interested in is trying to predict who's going to be a good leader and who's going to be a good soldier and the rest. And they have yet to find any kind of foolproof scheme in doing that.
Right.
Because the people you might figure back in Camp Polk who are going to be the heroes, maybe not. Although Dick Peters said that from his experience, when I was talking with him yesterday, that before you went in at Minnick, he had a pretty good idea of most everybody in his third platoon and who was going to be able to kind of rely on. And he said he was, in general, pretty accurate in his judgment.
But he was...
But he was a good leader.
he was very active.
Right.
He was very active. Well, he was... I could see this man flitting back and forth, you know, between the guys, and Jesus. I thought to myself, this guy's going to get knocked off, you know.
And he did, of course.
Yeah, well, he had a lot of esprit de corps. This is what Ollie North had in mind when he was describing the Admiral Poindexter, that I would follow him up any hill.
Yeah.
And this is what lies behind any soldier or any sailor or what have you. You have leaders and you have followers. Not every follower will make a good leader or vice versa, you see, but you need both. You need a general and you need a private.
You need good platoon sergeants and you need people who they're going to look around and see them right there.
Yeah.
You wonder why, and I've had this again and again, and maybe it's just the people who come here feel this way, but there seems to be such unanimity of opinion that this was such a good company and a good group of people, and you felt at home when you got there, and you did too, and I talked to Jim McDonald just now, and there was a sense that after you drifted around from place to place, that suddenly this was home, and there was something very special.
And a lot of camaraderie. You know?
Yeah. It sounds as though it was a fairly rambunctious group, and a little hard to handle, and would tend to be out of line now and again. But at the same time, it was a cohesive and very loyal group of people.
Yes. You know, and some good times and scary, but good times too. You know, I talk about good times.
Well,
I think more of the good times were experienced here in this country rather than overseas.
Oh, I don't know.
The breaking in period, I guess, from civilian status into a trained soldier, and so...
Yeah, but those were trying
There were
times,
liberties,
and everything was new, and you didn't know what Army life was going to be like, and they said, you do, you know, you squat, and you had better, you know. And but then after you got into it, you know, it's just like combat duty, getting into it, you know. But I found overseas was, like I was saying before, that they were quite differently from us in the way we lived and everything, and things, how we were taught, and how they're taught, and how they think, you know. I was at what made me dislike one person over there, discipline England. And we were at Covent Garden, we were at a dance. I just happened to be sitting next to a girl who was a very attractive girl, but she was very mouthy at the same time. And how she was lauding it over all the American soldiers. And for instance, she says, I bet you fellows don't even know the name of the island that the Statue of Liberty is on. Good question, right? Wasn't Ellis Island. Jesus. And nobody knew, you know. Jesus.
Do you ever get any, in your experiences, encounter the question concerning the dropping of the atomic bomb and the loss of life on Japan?
Nobody,
From the point of view
nobody
of the
that
foot
was in
soldier.
the military.
You know, I've oftentimes heard that. You see, some people would say, gee, it was immoral to have dropped the bomb. Well, you've got to talk to someone who was on his way to fight the Japanese. Even though the Japanese had lost the war, they were still a very dedicated group of people. There would have been many, many lives that would have been lost in the process of overtaking Japan, and it would have been overtaken. But it's a question of the loss of Japanese life as opposed to the loss of the foot soldier.
Oh yeah, I worked for the fellow in a meat market in Michigan when I was in junior college, and he was on 40 millimeter ground mount, or on a half track, I guess, and he was scheduled to go ashore with the first group in Japan, and the landings.
Yeah.
And he was real convinced that he wouldn't have lived the day on that 40 because they were going to send those 40s in against blockhouses and entrenchments. And he said that nobody could talk to him about the dangers of dropping the bomb.
Yeah.
No, I think
It's regrettable that there's loss of life on the part of women and children and what have you, but who instigated the conflagration?
And it's and certainly, I don't know, one way to look at it is simply say that it's another weapon in a war that had terrible weapons that did terrible things.
Yeah.
And there are an awful lot of women and children who died in Hamburg and Dresden and Coventry and a whole lot of places. And that this is just an extension of it in a terrible way. No, but for the people, everybody I talked to who were combat people, it's the war is over. Now I can go home. You got home, you said, in April of '46?
Yeah.
And what happened then after you got back?
I was pretty much at a loss of what I wanted to do. Of course, that particular time I didn't have it. Things were tough at home. Never came from a rich family or anything like that. Things were tough. I was pulled out of high school by my father to go to work to help support the family because he wasn't feeling good. So then I got into the Army. When I got out, I was at a loss. I was, you don't know what the hell you want to do or what you want to do. My father says, you can either get into the fire department or the police department. He says, I can do that much for you. I said, no, I want to get back into uniform again. I just got out. Give me a break, But then I had a cousin who was in the National Guard in a town not too far away. And they were in tanks and stuff like that. So I got, it's kind of interesting. I went over and got to talk to my cousin. He was a tank commander, and he tried to induce me to join. So he introduced me to the company commander, and he talked to me, and he wanted me to get in. He said, I'll make you a tank commander right off. He said, I'll give you a good. I said, Jesus, I don't know. He said, take this home with you and think about it. So I took all the papers home, and I read them over, and I looked at them. I don't know. Threw them away. Tore them right up. I said, that's it. No, I'm not going to do this. But then I went to my uncle had a dairy, pasteurizing milk, making ice cream and stuff like that. I went to work there. I wasn't happy there. I met my wife now, and she was a nurse. Met her at the hospital, and got to going together. Then I finally decided we were going to get married after 5 years of that, and then we got we got married, and I went to work at St. Thomas, and I worked there for 10 years. I was making cloth, which was interesting as all hell. And I had a chance to get to the fire department up in the town where I was living. So I took that. I said, what the hell, there's no future here. What am I doing, you know? So I was looking forward to the security end of it. Got back in the uniform, stayed there for 26 years, finally got out. Retired last October. And that's it. I had to get out then because I got a knee injury, got hurt at a fire, so couldn't go back to work, so that was it.
And you got back when?
Well, somewhat earlier. I was discharged. I returned back to this country in September of the previous year, 45. And then I had a 45-day furlough or so and was discharged in November. So I was out in November. The following week or two, I went down to graduate school and started in January, the spring semester. Started teaching in June, the following June.
Where'd you go to school?
Manhattan College.
Manhattan College,
Yeah. And I started teaching there June of 46. And so I taught there for about 10 years, got married, thought it was time to make some money, and leave the teaching profession. Not that there was ever any money within the profession. And so from there I went down to the Glenn Martin Company in their vibration section, senior mechanical engineer, and we were working on Navy planes and Army B-57s. But then we didn't particularly care for the Baltimore area. I was from Yonkers, and my wife had yet to move down. So I left there after about 6 months or so and went to, with IT&T, with the Federal Laboratories in Nutley, New Jersey. Now this is the equivalent of Bell Labs out in Jersey. I stood there about 6 months and wasn't too happy there, so I went out to Republic Aviation and really worked there as a civil engineer. Doing stress analysis on the landing gear of the airplane. So I was there about a year or so, and then they had a big setback in that they lost a major contract that they had on the 103 airplane. And so at that point I thought I had my hands full of engineering. I went back to teaching at the Maritime College, and this is where I am today. So after all these years, it's almost time to become an emeritus.
Did you use GI Bill benefits?
Oh yes, yeah, right. My GI Bill paid for all the graduate work and the textbooks and the slide rules and anything and everything.
Did you use GI Bill?
No. I thought about it, but I must say, when I was in the Army, I liked the action. I really did. And that's why I think I get back into the fire department, to do that. And it was always something.
Oh, my brother-in-law was in the Marine Corps in Vietnam, came back and joined the police force in Pontiac.
Yeah, right. And I think I needed that, that drive all the time. Really.
I felt the same sort of thing at the Glenn Martin Company with all these airplanes. I mean, I can envision myself in one of these fighters.
And then I did a lot of hunting. I hunted practically all my life, and I just gave that up about 2 years ago. Then I found out it was nicer shooting with pitches than with a rifle, you see, the deer.
Yeah, they walk away.
You don't have to use it to carry the camera, you have to carry the deer out.
Johnny Carson was talking about deer hunting about 2 nights ago. And he said, I like to hunt too. He said, but I went up to this deer, and this deer stared at me with these pretty eyes, he said. I proposed.
Not surprising.
So he said he could never do any hunting.
Anything else that I really need to know that you need to tell me? That other people need to know 100 years from now?
Well, I guess really no one looks forward to a war. But I guess if you have to defend your country and the principles are there, and you were ordered into the conflagration, well, I would say, don't shirk your duty. It's nice to have your freedom, but there's a price to be paid.
Just love your country, that's all. That's it.
Be a patriot.